All right, joining us now to discuss the crypto markets and more is Anthony Scaramucci, SkyBridge Capital founder and managing partner. Welcome.
It's good to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
It's great to have you here. Now, let's begin with what you're doing here at Consensus. You've heard why I'm excited. What are you excited about?
Well, I have to confess, this is my first time at Consensus. How about that?
God,
so
what
hopefully
took you so long?
I know. Well, hopefully it won't be my last time. It's like what they say about Texas, right? As soon as I heard about it, I got here. But no, I'm super excited to be here. Congratulations on the event. And I'm here to talk a little bit about FTX, a little bit about our business. We're having a great quarter. So we've got some investors here that we're talking to and taking one day at a time.
Yeah, on the topic of FTX, you're going to be joining former FTX US President Brett Harrison on a panel later today. We'd love to hear your opinion. What should crypto exchanges be doing differently in light of FTX?
Well, you know, I'm going to answer from the regulatory side, if that's okay. I actually think the regulators have to do something different. The regulators in the United States are swinging left and right. If you had asked me before Sam's demise, it seemed like there was going to be a collection of regulators that were going to allow him to get margin approval in the United States for FTX US, and there was going to be a, let's call it a birthing of the crypto markets in the United States. As a result of the FTX debacle, the pendulum has gone the other way now, and you've got things like Operation Choke Point 2.0, and you've got them trying to debank, and they're suing people like Coinbase as an example. And so for me, I think this is a regulatory issue. We've got to get better regulatory clarity in the US, find out directionally where they're going to go before we can really tell the exchanges what to do.
So just a rapid fire for you, because you mentioned quite a few things.
Yes.
Are you still friends with SBF?
Well, I haven't talked to Sam since November the 7th. So I don't know if you want to say, friend, look, I think with Sam,
I only asked this because you still stood out for him as a good person even after, which was quite interesting.
No, I think you're confusing with Kevin O'Leary. No, I didn't. I said I like Sam. I'm not going to revise history. I had a relationship with him. I considered him a friend. I think he betrayed me, and I think he betrayed his people, and he betrayed his customer base and so forth. And so I certainly don't like that about him. And so I haven't talked to him since November 7th, but I don't want to be one of those people that's revising history and trying to pretend that I didn't have a good relationship. I would have never taken him to the Middle East if I didn't trust him and like him. I think what Sam perpetrated was a full-on betrayal.
All right.
So
just going back to what you said, sorry about that. She asked what could crypto exchanges do differently. I just want to get a sense. You said, well, regulators need to do something differently. Yeah. But how do crypto exchanges get regulators to do something differently?
Well, that's my point. So until you tell me what the regulators are going to do, you can't really advise the crypto exchanges. You know, Gary Gensler is on tape at MIT explaining that none of these cryptocurrencies are actually securities. They don't meet the Howey test. And now he's saying, as a politician, that they all do. And so what is it, one way or the other? You know, Coinbase is actually suing the regulator, looking for more clarity. And the regulators are trying to regulate this industry off of a 1933 footprint. And so this would be like me telling you, we created the automobile, and we just recently created the airplane. Take the driver's ed manual and apply it to the air traffic. Okay, you can't use 1930 and 1940 regulation to regulate this industry. This industry needs to be regulated differently.
Yeah, this call for clarity is one that we hear time and time and time again, and nothing is happening with the regulators. What do you make of exchanges going overseas? You know, Coinbase recently said, like, maybe they're going to do it, maybe they're going to leave the U.S. Do you think that's what should be happening?
Well, I think they've already done that, right? I mean, they basically have gotten a license now in Bermuda. Brian was in London, showing himself on Twitter in London. I think they have to prepare themselves for the potentiality that the regulators in the U.S. and some of the politicians are trying to push the industry off the shore of the United States. And so that would be a near-term tragedy for the U.S. It would slow us down. It would crimp our intellectual innovation, and I hope they don't do that. But I mean, the good news about the United States is you get a circulation of elites, and so hopefully Gary's tenure at the SEC is short-lived, and we'll find somebody that's more practical and somebody that wants to bring these jobs to the U.S. What he's doing right now, I think he has to explain to people. He won't. You've got a lot of Republicans in the House that are trying to ask him for that. but he's not providing any clarity.
So just to be more clear about this, you think he's already done it, but if you were advising him directly, would you tell him to do it? That is, go offshore? Brian Armstrong?
No,
Coinbase?
I would not tell him to do that. What I would tell him to do is what he did last week, is meet with the SEC, meet with members of Congress. I want to take you back historically. I think it's important. When you had the banking debacle in the 1920s, you had very smart politicians like Franklin Roosevelt. He said, okay, let's go out to the banking industry. Let's have them self-regulate, self-regulatory organization, and let's build laws to create more transparency to reduce fraud. And then he hired Joe Kennedy. He said he's going to put a fox in charge of the hen house. That's Jack Kennedy's dad, who was a stock swindler back in the day. And there was a process in place. If the regulators did something very similar to what would happen in the 1930s, you'd have great regulatory clarity around the cryptocurrency industry. And no, I don't want Brian to leave. I would not recommend that Brian leave. I would want Brian to work with other industry leaders that are ethical and are trying to do the right thing to influence the Congress so that we don't lose the mantle of financial services leadership that we've had for the last 125 years.
Realistically, can he do that with let's say, Congress just not prioritizing any crypto regulation at the moment? Can he do that?
Not with the current SEC chairman. I don't think he can do it with the current SEC chairman.
I'm asking, should he be talking to the SEC chairman or should he be talking to Congress? Because it's the job of Congress to come up with regulation.
It's a combination. He's got to talk to the congressional leaders. And the good news is there's a large swath of congressional leaders in a bipartisan way that believe in crypto. And so that would be step one. Talk to the congressional leaders. Step two, we have to work on, you got to get Gary out of there, okay? I mean, so one way or the other. Either we have to have a 2024 election that knocks him out of the seat, or people have to look around and say, hey, why do we want to lose U.S. financial services leadership, where we've been the leader of the world on this stuff for more than a century? Why do we want to do that? Because there's a couple of small-minded politicians that think that this is the right thing to do, when you and I, or maybe not, but I'll speak for myself, know that it's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, Bloomberg recently reported that since stepping down as president of FTX US, Brett Harrison raised $5 million for a new crypto startup called Architect, and you were one of the investors. Tell us why you felt it was necessary to invest in that.
Well, listen, I'm a big believer in loyalty. I'm a big believer in, I don't want Brett, who, like myself, had a bad outcome with Sam Bankman-Fried. What we do in our societies, we have a tendency to blame victims of fraud. And so Brett wasn't part of the fraud. And there's a lot of people that are tarring and feathering him. The media has gone after him. There's Twitter screeds against him. But I consider him a friend. And so in my life and in the neighborhood I grew up in, you run towards your friends when they have situations like that. You don't run away from them. And so I thought it was very important for me. And again, this is my personal money. It's not my fund's money. It's from my family office. My son has a fund that puts some money in there, which has my money, and I put some personal money in the business because I'm a big believer in Brett. And I think it's a big lesson for people that you stay in things. You don't leave your friends when they're in the middle of a bad situation.
That's morally speaking, that's a value I think we all can agree with. We
well, look, especially in this industry right now, okay, we are so much better together. I'm a big believer in collaboration, not competition. And so it's important for me and for SkyBridge to be behind Brett at this time.
Yeah, so I just, there was a session yesterday, I'm just going to bring that up, but Senator Ted Cruz, as you know, has proposed a national ban on a US CBDC. You've had Governor Ron DeSantis proposing a similar measure in Florida. He's got privacy concerns. Yesterday, and I was covering this session, ex-CFTC Commissioner Chris Giancarlo, he gave a speech here at the main stage. He said CBDCs are coming whether Americans like it or not, and whether the US chooses to lead or not. Where do you stand on this debate?
Well, you know, I'm more of a libertarian, so I'm probably in Senator Cruz's camp and Governor DeSantis' camp. But I do agree that they're coming whether we like it or not. I guess the real question is, what are we doing with the US dollar? For me, I want the dollar to maintain its leadership, at least as a fiat reserve currency. And so the question has to be, can it maintain that leadership without having a CBDC? I think the answer is yes. I think somebody like Jeremy Allaire, if you bring him on the air, he would tell you yes. We can get this solution from the private sector, and a result of which you can have the dollar maintain its mantle of leadership, without having the privacy concerns for your citizens.
And if that was the case, then you're okay with that?
Yeah, I would prefer not to have a U.S. Federal Reserve CBDC, but I do want the dollar to maintain its reserve currency status in the fiat world for many different reasons.
Yeah, before we wrap up here, I want to ask you about NFTs and elections. So former President Trump announced the release of Series 2 of his NFT collection. Right. And I just want to get your opinion on what this means for upcoming elections and NFTs. Do you think we're going to see...
I want President Trump to make so much money that he drops out of the race. You know, I was hoping that stupid SPAC that he had was going to go to the moon, and I want those NFTs to make him so much money that he's like, okay, I don't want to be in politics anymore. That's my dream for President Trump.
Is it going to come true?
I have no idea, but man, I do pray for that. You know, come on. We're going to have Joe Biden and President Trump again. I mean, this is one of the greatest countries in the history of the world. And we're going to have these two guys as the guys running for the leadership of this country at this hour when we have so many complex problems.
Elaborate.
It's ridiculous.
No, elaborate. What do you mean? Because that's where it's heading right now.
Elaborate. I mean, I think it's prima facie obvious that our political system is failing the American electorate. Now, if you're cynical, you'll say that we're getting the politicians that we deserve, but I don't think it's really that. I think the system is broken, and I think that we haven't had an appropriate constitutional amendment since the 1965 Voters Act, and we have to break this stronghold of these 200-year-old fossils that are still running the country. Okay, so you have a combination of gerrymandering and campaign finance spending that has run wild, and it's creating a perpetual class of political establishment that is failing the country. They only care about their own personal power, but not serving the American people. And so this is a thing that should be very upsetting to everybody listening to this. And these people are not focused on what we need to do. We have to reform our entitlement spending. We have to right-size our educational programs. We have to rebuild our infrastructure. And we need 10 and 15-year plans from the American government instead of these nonsensical spats on cable news.
Okay.
And so that's where I am, you know, and the Trump name calling and all the bizarreness that comes with him. And listen, I work for the guy. He's intellectually vacuous. He has no executive management skills. And anybody that had their own career or had their own money or they were a general spoke out against them. It was only the politically expedient politicians that spun like weather vanes to stay with him.
So I guess my question is that he's got NFTs, and does his NFTs getting sold out in a day for the second time, the first time also when he debuted them, they got sold out in a day. Does it mean anything for the NFT market, or is it exclusively about Donald Trump and his followers?
You know, I think it means something about the NFT market, but I think if you were doing a weighted average test, and this is just my surmise, it's 80% about Donald Trump, 20% about the market.
Got it. Okay. What's your take on the market now that you mentioned it?
By the way, I mean, you're obviously a very intelligent guy. You know, he had people stepping into the marketplace to buy those NFTs for him, right? I mean, it's sort of a pre-sale thing. It's like they do with these stupid political books.
Yeah, but somehow we journalists, don't add that information because it's difficult to kind of fact check that and prove that, as you know.
Well, no, but that's why I'm not a journalist. I'm just offering my opinion.
We appreciate
that. That's why we're asking you about it.
Yeah, I'm offering my opinion.
Okay, so just tell us finally your take on Bitcoin, on generally the markets, the crypto markets, given what's happening in the regulatory space right now. Well, where do you see it going?
So the regulators bizarrely are helping Bitcoin right now, because what's happening is the crisis of confidence in what's going on in the regulating space, the Federal Reserve, the Congress. People are saying, well, wait a minute, I need to probably own more Bitcoin. And so we have a bunch of drunk drivers right now. We're drunk driving the Federal Reserve. We're drunk driving the budget deficit situation and the debt cap in terms of where we're going with that, in terms of raising the debt ceiling. And I think people are starting to realize, wait a minute, we've got to get the keys away from these people and perhaps put it into a decentralized format where we can have more predictability and less of this regional effect that's happening from these policymakers. We have transitory inflation. We're going to dump 40% more US dollars into the marketplace. Oh, wait a minute, we don't have transitory inflation. We're going to raise interest rates 500 basis points in 21 months and crush the market. But wait a minute, we just did that and now it's crushed the regional banking system. And so now we have to figure out a way to bail out the regional banking system. Come on, guys.
Okay.
Come on, guys.
Okay, he's going to be
Take a
speaking
step
more.
back. Let's look at the macro environment and come up with a long-term plan for the American people that's common sense based.
Okay. Anthony Scaramucci, guys, give it up for him. SkyBridge Capital founder and managing partner.